The shrill voice of Tessa Norwood cut through my Saturday morning like a rusty knife. "Your dogs barked for 43 minutes yesterday, Randall. 43, she yelled across the street, her blonde bob practically vibrating with rage. I paused mid-sip of my coffee, standing barefoot on my porch. My two labs, Moose and Pepper, sat calmly at my feet, tails thumping lazily. "They barked because your grandson was banging on my fence with a rake," I said, keeping my voice even. Tessa gasped like I'd accused her of arson. "Zayden was playing, and even if he was, your dogs are a nuisance. I'm filing a formal complaint with the HOA." "You are the HOA," I said deadpan. "I am the president," she snapped, adjusting her name-plated lanyard like she was the Queen of England. "And I will be enforcing the rules." By Monday afternoon, I had an official violation notice taped to my front door, $250 fine. "Uncontrolled pet noise," I laughed. Then I checked my security footage. Sure enough, there was Zayden smacking the fence with a rake like he was trying to summon spirits. My dogs barked for maybe 5 minutes, tops. I walked across the street to my neighbor's house. Theo Nash, retired attorney, widower, and the kind of guy who wore slippers and a tie at the same time. "She's trying to fine me over 5 minutes of barking and a fence attack from her own family," I said, handing him a flash drive. Theo popped it into his laptop. "These timestamps are solid. This isn't just nonsense, this is fabricated enforcement. Can we do anything?" He leaned back in his chair and grinned. "Oh, we're not just going to do something. We're going to sue the president of the HOA, I blinked. "You're serious?" She issued a fraudulent fine personally. "That's abuse of authority under civil HOA statutes, and if we dig deeper, I'd bet this isn't the first time she's done it." That night, we started gathering evidence. I dug through old group chats and emails, and Theo requested public meeting minutes. Turns out, Tessa had a habit of burying complaints about her own family's violations while issuing fines to everyone else. Theo drafted a letter and sent it to the HOA board. It outlined our intent to sue Tessa Norwood personally for abuse of power, selective enforcement, and issuing fraudulent fines. He attached the footage, timestamps, and a breakdown of her behavior patterns. By Friday, the board called an emergency meeting. Tessa tried to shut it down. "You don't have the authority to call this meeting without my approval," she shouted. "You don't have the authority to lie to residents and misuse your power," Theo said calmly, holding up a folder. "This is harassment," she cried. "No, Tessa," I said, stepping beside him. "This is accountability." The room went quiet. Even her own board members looked uneasy. Theo placed a printed screenshot on the table. It was Tessa's digital signature on my violation form filed after she reviewed the footage I'd emailed her. She knew the barking was minimal. "She fined me anyway." She turned pale. "This is just the beginning," Theo said. "We're filing suit at the county courthouse Monday morning." Tessa stood there, stunned. For the first time in years, she didn't have a single word to say. The following Monday, I arrived at the county courthouse with Theo by my side, the man clad in a navy blazer that looked like it hadn't been dusted off since the Reagan administration. He carried a leather briefcase that squeaked every time it swung. The kind of squeak that warned predators something dangerous was coming. We were there to file the civil complaint against Tessa Norwood. It was more than a symbolic gesture. Theo wanted to make sure the filing hit the public docket before Tessa could spin the narrative. Her control over the HOA only extended as far as the neighborhood. Beyond that, she was just another citizen with a bad attitude and a paper trail. "Clerk's window is this way," Theo said, leading us past a row of sleepy-eyed attorneys sipping burnt coffee. The woman behind the glass reviewed the paperwork, then gave a tight nod and stamped it. Just like that, the complaint became a matter of public record. Abuse of authority under state HOA statutes, willful selective enforcement, fraudulent documentation. Theo turned to me as we walked back outside. "Now we wait for the summons to be served. She'll have 10 days to respond." "She'll throw a fit," I said. "I'm counting on it," he said, adjusting his glasses. The more noise she makes, the more attention we get. And the more attention we get, the faster this house of cards comes down. The plan wasn't just to sue her. That was step one. The real goal was to drag her tactics into the light, brick by brick. 2 days later, it started. A new HOA notice arrived at my house. This time, it claimed my mailbox was non-compliant with neighborhood aesthetics. The same mailbox that had been there since the neighborhood was built. It was laughable, but it was also targeted. And I wasn't the only one. By evening, I had messages from 5 neighbors. One got cited for unauthorized seasonal decorations because of a single pumpkin on their porch. Another got hit with a gardening violation for planting pansies in a flower bed. The pattern was obvious. Every single one had signed Theo's petition last fall to demand term limits for HOA leadership. "She's retaliating," I said, pacing in Theo's living room while he examined the new violations. "She's panicking," he corrected. "She's trying to re-establish control, but all she's doing is proving our case." He opened his laptop and began drafting a supplemental filing. Each bogus citation would be added to support a broader pattern of abuse. Then came the break we didn't expect. A neighbor named Darla, who used to serve as HOA treasurer before resigning abruptly 2 years ago, showed up on my porch that night. "I heard about the lawsuit," she said, clutching an old manila folder like it was radioactive. "I've been holding on to this. I didn't know what to do with it, but if you and Theo are serious." Inside the folder were photocopies of HOA expense records receipts, check stubs, and bank statements. There were charges for things no HOA should be paying for. Spa treatments in Tessa's name. A catered birthday party at a private estate. A weekend rental cabin for board retreat purposes that no other board member had attended. Theo flipped through the pages slowly, his face unreadable. "She's been embezzling," he said without emotion. "For years, it looks like," Darla nodded. "That's why I quit. I tried to bring it up, but she shut me down and changed the meeting agenda. After that, I started getting citations almost weekly. I moved down the street just to get out from under it." Theo made 2 calls that night, one to the county sheriff's office, the other to a financial crimes investigator he used to work with on municipal cases. By Thursday, a detective named Alvarez came knocking. He wore a gray windbreaker and spoke with the clipped precision of someone who'd seen 100 HOA scandals just like this, only messier. "We're opening an investigation into possible misappropriation of funds and fraudulent accounting," he said, accepting the folder from Theo. "You'll be kept updated. In the meantime, don't discuss this with her directly. Let us handle it." But Tessa didn't need us to say anything. The next morning, she found out anyway. She stormed the neighborhood in a golf cart decorated with HOA flags, clutching a bullhorn like a war general. "Residents of Deer Hollow," she shouted from the cul-de-sac, "do not be fooled by false claims. There is a coordinated effort to destabilize this community." Curtains twitched, front doors creaked open, but no one came out to listen, no one stood with her. She drove in circles for almost 20 minutes, barking into the bullhorn about outsiders infiltrating the board and neighborhood sabotage. But the only sound louder than her voice was the silence of the street. "She's unraveling," Theo said from my front steps. "She knows it's over," I said. "Not yet, but she knows it's coming." The next board meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday evening. This time, it wouldn't be in her living room. The county ordered it moved to the community center due to the ongoing investigation and public interest. The center filled up fast. Over 70 residents showed up, some standing, some sitting on folding chairs, and a few leaning against the back wall, arms crossed. A quiet tension buzzed through the air. Tessa entered last, flanked by 2 board loyalists who looked like they regretted showing up. She tried to call the meeting to order, but the moment she opened her mouth, a deputy stepped forward. "Miss Norwood, please step aside. This meeting is now under observation as part of an ongoing investigation into financial misconduct." She froze. "You can't do that. This is it's a publicly funded community center, and your HOA is under formal review. You may remain present, but you are not running this meeting." The room broke into murmurs. Theo stood and addressed the crowd. "For those of you unaware, we have submitted evidence of financial misappropriation, abuse of power, and targeted retaliation by Miss Norwood in her capacity as HOA president. This evidence has triggered a county-level investigation, and pending the outcome, we are requesting an emergency vote to freeze her authority and initiate a formal audit." The deputy nodded. "Ballots are available at the back, those in favor of suspending Miss Norwood's authority until the investigation concludes. Please cast your vote." Within 20 minutes, the results were tallied: 68 in favor, 1 abstention, 2 against. Tessa looked like her bones had turned to glass. She didn't speak, she didn't argue. She just sat down slowly, her bullhorn resting on the floor beside her like a discarded weapon. The deputy collected the ballots and nodded. "Effective immediately, Miss Norwood is suspended from all HOA duties. Any further actions taken by her on behalf of the HOA will be considered null and void pending the investigation." As people began to file out, a few stopped to shake Theo's hand. Others gave me quiet nods of thanks. No one said much. They didn't have to. Back at my house, Moose and Pepper were asleep on the porch, tails twitching in dreamland. I sat next to them, watching the shadows stretch across the street. "Think it'll stick?" I asked Theo, who had followed me back. "She'll lawyer up. She'll try to spin it." "But it's too late," he said, sitting beside me. "We didn't just stop her, we exposed the rot under the paint. And the lawsuit, still moving forward, she committed fraud. That's not just unethical, it's criminal." I looked out across the neighborhood, the air finally quiet, peaceful in a way it hadn't been in years. "She picked the wrong dogs to bark at," I said. Theo chuckled just once. "She picked the wrong attorney to live next to." The following week unfolded like a slow, calculated storm. Tessa Norwood's absence from the HOA office didn't go unnoticed. Her nameplate was quietly removed, her email auto-replied with a vague, administrative leave message, and her usual midday patrols in her golf cart ceased entirely. But the real damage had only just started to surface. By Thursday morning, Theo called me over with a tone that didn't match his usual methodical calm. "You need to see this," he said, sliding a stack of printed emails across his kitchen table. The county investigator subpoenaed the HOA's digital records. These are internal communications between Tessa and her board loyalists. I scanned the pages. Some were time-stamped just days before my first violation notice. The contents were worse than either of us expected. One email from Tessa to the HOA's vice president read, "We need to make an example of Randall. If we let him keep challenging authority, others will follow. Start flagging his property for anything you can find. If we push hard enough, he'll either fall in line or move." Theo's expression was tight. "This isn't just unethical, it's retaliation planned in writing. That alone is grounds for civil liability." Another exchange revealed that they had intentionally altered meeting minutes from the previous year to remove resident objections to a budget increase. The records had been doctored to make it appear as if the vote had been unanimous when in fact, nearly a third of the residents had opposed it. And the increased dues. They'd padded a reserve fund Tessa had exclusive access to. "They rewrote official records," I said, stunned. "That's document fraud. And the county prosecutor agrees," Theo said, tapping a yellow envelope on the counter. "They just opened a criminal case. I hadn't realized I was holding my breath until I let it out. So what happens now? They'll start with search warrants. Financial records, HOA storage units, anything she's touched. And," he added, his voice growing colder, "they're pulling security footage from the office. There's a suspicion she's been shredding evidence." By nightfall, unmarked vehicles rolled into the neighborhood. Plainclothes officers entered the HOA office with a locksmith and emerged 2 hours later carrying sealed boxes. Word spread fast, and for once, it wasn't Tessa doing the talking. The next morning, I stopped by the mailbox kiosk and found an envelope addressed to all Deer Hollow residents. It wasn't from the HOA. It was from the county's Office of Community Oversight. In it was a summary of the investigation so far, a hotline number for residents to report suspicious activity, and a notice that the HOA's finances were frozen pending a full forensic audit. Across the street, homeowners stood in small clusters, some reading aloud, others just shaking their heads. I caught sight of Mr. Han, the quiet man who always wore wool socks with sandals. He folded his letter and looked over at me. "We knew she was bad," he said. "Didn't know she was criminal." That weekend, Theo invited a few residents over to his backyard for what he called an information evening. It wasn't a formal meeting, more of a neighborhood huddle. Lawn chairs circled around his fire pit, and the air carried the faint scent of charcoal and pine. "There's something else we need to bring forward," Theo told the group, keeping his voice low despite the privacy. "We found a shell company linked to the HOA's maintenance contracts. It's called Clearview Community Services. Trouble is, it doesn't actually exist, at least not in any legal sense." A woman named Carla leaned forward. "Then where's the money going?" "That's just it," Theo said. "The checks were written to Clearview. But the account it deposits into is owned by someone named Donald Norwood." The group went silent. "Yes," Theo said. "Her husband." Gasps rippled through the group like falling dominoes. "They've been siphoning HOA funds into a fake company under his name," Theo continued. "We're talking tens of thousands. Landscaping, pressure washing, even snow removal, none of it ever happened. It was all invoices for services that were never delivered." A man in a navy hoodie, Greg, who ran a small tree service, looked like he'd been slapped. "She told me I couldn't bid on the landscaping contract because it was already fulfilled. I could have used that work." Theo nodded. "You weren't the only one shut out. She made it look like contracts were competitive, but they were never on the table." Carla asked the next question. "So what's the county going to do?" "They've turned it over to the state attorney's office. It's officially a fraud case now. Embezzlement, falsifying documents, racketeering. If they can prove it, it could mean prison time." The fire crackled between us, and for a time no one spoke. The weight of it all settled in like dust. Greg finally broke the silence. "So, what do we do now?" Theo looked around the circle. "You show up, you vote, you testify if you're asked. The state will do its part. But this kind of corruption only thrives when neighbors stay quiet." That ends here. 2 days later, Tessa Norwood was arrested at her home. No fanfare, no warning. Just 2 state investigators in windbreakers and a deputy with a warrant. She was led out in handcuffs, her front door left open behind her. Her husband wasn't far behind. A local news van showed up within the hour. Somehow, word had leaked. Residents lined the street, watching from porches and sidewalks as the footage was recorded. It aired that evening on the local station, HOA president accused of embezzlement, fraud, and retaliation. That night, Theo and I sat on my porch. He brought over 2 bottles of seltzer water, his idea of a celebratory drink. "You think she'll take a plea deal?" I asked. "Probably. The evidence is stacked high enough to bury her, but even if she does, it won't erase what she did." "No," I said, "but it makes sure she won't do it again." We watched the street quietly for a while. Kids played on the sidewalk again, something that had quietly disappeared over the years. Greg's truck was parked in front of a neighbor's yard, finally hired to trim back the trees Tessa had ignored. And for the first time in months, there wasn't a single violation notice fluttering on anyone's door. The emergency board appointed an interim president, a woman named Elaine, who worked for the city housing department. She'd already begun drafting a new charter, one that required financial transparency, term limits, and an independent review board elected by residents. Theo had agreed to advise during the transition, though he made it clear he didn't want the job. "I prefer to be the sword behind the curtain," he told me. As for me, I took down the extra security camera I'd installed above my porch. It had served its purpose. Moose and Pepper still barked when the mail truck came, but no one cared anymore. They were dogs, after all, not weapons in a political war. A week later, I got a letter from the county clerk's office. It confirmed that my lawsuit against Tessa would proceed even as the criminal case moved forward. Theo estimated the civil damages could reach tens of thousands once the court tallied the retaliatory fines, emotional distress, and legal fees. I didn't need the money, but I wanted the record. Tessa Norwood built her power on fear, silence, and manipulation. She thought a clipboard and a title made her untouchable. What she didn't count on was someone documenting everything. Someone who knew how to turn the pressure back on, and someone with a neighbor like Theo Nash. Justice didn't come with parades or speeches. It came on letterhead, in courtrooms. In the quiet knowledge that bad people don't always win, not when good people get organized. And in Deer Hollow, we were finally organized. The morning of Tessa's arraignment slipped in under a gray sky, the kind that makes everything feel quieter than it should. I parked 2 blocks away from the courthouse, not because I had to, but because I didn't want to walk in with the crowd I knew would be gathering. Theo was already waiting by the steps, flipping through a manila folder with the kind of intent focus that made it clear he wasn't there just to watch. "You brought more?" I asked, nodding at the folder. "Statement from a contractor who was offered a cash deal to keep his mouth shut about a non-existent tree removal job," he said, not looking up. "He came forward yesterday after seeing the news segment. She's going to hate that. She's going to hate prison more." Inside, the courtroom buzzed with reporters, county officials, and more than a few Deer Hollow residents who had taken the day off work. There was something surreal about seeing Tessa escorted in through the side door, wearing a beige suit that looked like it had been ironed by someone else. Her attorney, a tall man with horn-rimmed glasses and a tight jaw, walked a step behind her, clutching a stack of documents like he didn't trust any of them. Judge Morales, known for his no-nonsense courtroom demeanor, entered briskly and called the session to order. "Miss Norwood," he said, looking over the rim of his glasses, "you've been charged with 39 counts including embezzlement, wire fraud, document falsification, and retaliatory misconduct under state HOA statutes. How do you plead?" Her voice cracked. "Not guilty, Your Honor." Theo leaned toward me. "She's going to drag this out." The prosecution requested a freeze on all HOA assets tied to her tenure, including a halt on outgoing checks and third-party contracts. The judge agreed, pending a full audit by an independent accounting firm. Then came something none of us saw coming. The prosecutor stepped forward and requested a protective order for 3 residents who had come forward with signed affidavits detailing threats they received from Tessa in the months prior to her suspension. One claimed she had been told to watch her pets carefully, and another found nails scattered in their driveway the day after they voted against a budget proposal. Judge Morales didn't hesitate. Protective order granted. Miss Norwood, you are to have no contact with those individuals directly or indirectly. Violations will result in immediate remand. Tessa's attorney tried objecting, but the judge shut it down with a curt shake of his head. Afterward, on the courthouse steps, a news crew approached Theo for a statement. He declined, but I caught a few of their questions. "You believe the HOA board was complicit. Will residents be reimbursed for the fraudulent dues? Is this the beginning of a larger investigation into HOA abuse?" Theo didn't answer any of them. He just handed over a copy of the court filing and walked away. Back in Deer Hollow, the neighborhood felt like it was holding its breath. With Tessa gone, the board operated in a kind of limbo. Elaine, the interim president, held open forums twice a week to update residents and collect feedback. For the first time in years, people actually attended. Not to argue, but to listen, contribute, and rebuild. On a rainy Tuesday evening, Elaine called a special meeting in the school gymnasium. Folding chairs were arranged in a circle instead of rows. No podium, no microphones, just people talking. "I want to propose dissolving the current board," she said. We need a fresh start. We'll form a transition committee, elect new members, and this time, every decision gets posted online within 24 hours. A man named Victor raised his hand. Will that include a full audit of the last 5 years? Yes, she replied. We'll publish every page. The vote was unanimous. Every hand went up. After the meeting. Greg approached me with a clipboard. We're collecting names for the transition committee. You interested? I hesitated. Not sure I'm cut out for it. You don't have to run anything. Just help set up the rules, make sure it's fair. You've earned a seat at the table. That night, I sat with Theo on his porch as wind pushed through the trees. Neither of us said much. The sound of hammers echoed faintly from down the street as someone finally replaced the warped boards on their fence, no longer worried about mysterious fines. I went to law school thinking I'd spend my career arguing over zoning permits, Theo said after a while. Never thought I'd help take down a suburban tyrant. You picked the right neighborhood, I said. He stared at the moon for a moment. You know why I moved here? I figured it was the quiet. He shook his head. My wife picked it. She loved the trees, the parks, and the way the houses all had those crooked little mailboxes. Said it felt like a place people looked out for each other. Took me a long time to see it. And now I see it. The lawsuit I filed against Tessa moved forward in civil court. She tried to delay, but the judge wasn't buying it. With the criminal case already underway, the civil case moved swiftly. Depositions began the following month, and the discovery process revealed even more hidden accounts, forged contractor bids, and even surveillance footage from the HOA office that showed her shredding documents after the first board meeting where we challenged her. By the time we reached the settlement hearing, her attorney offered a deal: full restitution, public apology, and a 10-year ban from serving on any HOA board in the state. I rejected it. Theo leaned in during the break. You sure? She threatened my dogs, Theo. He nodded once. Then we take it all the way. The trial was brief, the evidence overwhelming. The jury awarded damages for emotional distress, defamation, and retaliatory fines. The total came out to just under $87,000. She tried to appeal, but the state froze her assets to cover the judgment. The money wasn't life-changing. But it meant something deeper. The record of what she did was permanent. She couldn't erase it, couldn't bury it under more lies. Spring rolled in slowly. Flowers bloomed again in front yards that had once been cited for excessive foliage. Kids rode their bikes freely, no longer worried about invisible boundaries drawn by someone with a clipboard and a grudge. At the next transition meeting, Elaine stood before a packed room. We've rewritten the charter, she said. It includes term limits, independent audits, and a recall mechanism. From now on, this isn't just a homeowners association. It's a community council. Applause erupted, not polite, but real. Honest. Afterward, Greg found me near the coffee table. You're on the council, you know? I never agreed to that. Too bad. We voted while you were in the hallway. I laughed, but something in me settled, not out of obligation, but because I finally felt like I belonged here. Not just in a house or a lot, but in a living, breathing neighborhood. Moose and Pepper still barked at the mail truck every morning. But now the mailman laughed and gave them treats. No more complaints, no more notices, just a better normal. A few weeks later, I got a letter postmarked from the county jail. I didn't open it. I dropped it in the shredder without a second thought. Some voices don't deserve the last word. We had reclaimed ours.